All right. Craig Morgan, welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you.
Well, Craig, congrats on the new EP. It's called American Soundtrack, and I know you must be really excited to be getting some new music out there.
Yeah, I mean that's what we do. So anytime we're getting to bring something new out and continue to hopefully appease our fan base and make new fans, that's our objective.
Well, it's got some great songs on it, and I think you're gonna definitely have some excited fans when it comes out. I want to ask you a little bit about the title track and how that one came together. It sort of sounds like going down memory lane a little bit, and it's like got a little bit of everything that maybe you listened to growing up in there. There's Tom Petty and John Mellencamp and Leonard Skinner and all sorts of references. Talk to me about that song.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. It's a trip down memory lane. Songs that the song themselves might not have impacted our lives, but there were impacting moments in our lives when we heard that song. So every time we hear that song, we reflect on a particular moment in our lives, and that's what that song talks about. It's an American soundtrack. Every song in there is for me reflects on a moment in my life, or I can reflect on a moment and remember hearing that song while something was happening. And being as I am an American, a very proud American, it's like the soundtrack to my life to some degrees.
So, give me an example of one song that you reference in there that kind of stands out, and where that takes you back to. Like, maybe it's Tom Petty, or pick another one.
Well, the one that I reflect on, the line that says "Sweet Home" from the Boys in Alabama.
Yeah,
Talking about Sweet Home Alabama. I vividly remember skateboarding in front of my house and hearing that song playing on a radio. Um, Yes, every time I hear it now, I can visualize me skateboarding as a kid in front of our house. So that one was very impacting.
yeah. Well, it's funny how music can do that to you. It can really take you right back to a place, and you remember exactly where you were the first time you heard it.
Well, that's what we hope for. I will tell you, as a songwriter, that's the goal, is to have a song that in some way attaches itself to someone's life. And it's generally, again, like I said, because of a moment. I don't necessarily know that it's the song as much as it is because you're in a particular place, whether it be a geographical location, a spiritual place in your life, an emotional place, whatever. But you hear that song at that time, and then from that point forward in the rest of your life, you reflect on that song as that
Yeah,
time in your life.
yeah, that's so true. Well, where am I reaching you right now, by the way? Are you in Nashville?
I'm just outside of Nashville, in Dixon, Tennessee. I'm home. I just
Okay.
got home yesterday from Alaska. Been gone for about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Been a long time.
Wow, it had to be kind of cold up there.
It was. It wasn't as cold as it usually is. In fact, there were a couple of nights where it was colder here than it was there.
All right. It's not often that I talk to people who grew up in Nashville. I talk to people who live there now all the time, but not many of them were born and raised around Nashville. So tell me a little bit about that. What was the house and the neighborhood that you grew up in like?
It was a real neighborhood. It was a very small neighborhood in Kingston Springs, Tennessee. I will tell you before, I always reflect on that as my place of growing up. But the reality was, my parents were flipping houses before that was an actual term. They would buy a place, fix it up, and sell it. Buy a place, fix it up, and sell it. And we did that until we lived in Kingston Springs, where I finished out my high school years and moved away to join the Army. So for me, that's kind of my home place. But in Middle Tennessee, Kingston Springs is the final place. Like I said, graduated from Cheatham County High School, went to Middle Tennessee State University for a little while, but lived in Dixon, Cheatham, Hickman, all in around that area.
What's the place that feels most like home to you when you kind of think back on this is the place that I kind of picture growing up and that I have the most maybe attachment to.
It was Kingston Springs, no
Yeah.
questions. Yeah, it was a small little town, and we lived in a neighborhood, where throw rock and hit your neighbor's house, or you could look out your window and see in their window, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was a real neighborhood in those days. Like my parents would leave and go to work, and we would walk to the elementary school where I would drop off my youngest siblings, and then I would get on a bus there and ride over to the high school. So for me, that was home. That's what I reflect on when I think of my childhood in particular.
You grew up in a pretty big family. You had what, three siblings? There's four of you, and I think you had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins
Oh yeah.
in the neighborhood, or at least in the immediate area. Um, when you think about who was the cook in your family, who stands out, and what were they known for?
Oh, it's no question my mom. In fact, she didn't just cook for us. She cooked for various other, throughout her life. She would cook at different places for her job. But I always found it fascinating. I would come home. I can remember as a kid coming home and looking in the cabinets in the refrigerator and not finding anything to eat. And then mom would get home and fix dinner and be like, man, where did all this come from? I was just in there. None of that crap was in there. She had the ability to make, great meals out of what I thought was nothing.
What were some of the dishes that she was kind of known for, that you loved the most?
Well, no one could touch my mom's biscuits and gravy. She could make homemade biscuits and gravy. The closest thing I've ever found that was store bought is these Pillsbury frozen biscuits. They come in
Yeah.
a bag. I know it sounds so super cheesy, but now when I eat those, and I don't eat them a lot, I'm a pretty heavy, pretty protein heavy, low carb kind of guy. But when I do, I immediately can see my mom's biscuits and gravy and lots of butter. But yeah, she was. I mean, like I said, it didn't matter what she cooked, but I personally remember and loved her biscuits and gravy, chicken and dumplings. She made the best chicken and dumplings. Yeah, she was fabulous at anything, really, any meal she cooked.
Tell me your mom's name.
Betty. I
Betty.
mean, Betty Sue. If it don't get any more southern than that.
No, it doesn't. And what about holidays? I mean, did y'all have big gatherings with all those cousins around?
Well, you alluded to the big family, and my dad had my dad had six brothers, and each one of those guys had four children. When other people would go for a summer vacation to wherever, we always went to family. And we had a family reunion every year, and at least once a month, we would have a family gathering at my grandparents'. So there would be, 20 or 30 plus kids running around all over the farm, and the dads and the moms and everybody cooking. And it was a big, long picnic table outside during the warm weather, and everybody would gather around. Of course, all the kids sat someplace different. But it was a big deal. Family was uh, that was our friends.
Yeah.
That was our close friends. When I would go somewhere for the weekends, it would be to my cousin's house. There were times when I would stay at my cousin's house during the week and go to school from there. That's how close we were as a family.
Do you have you stayed close with all those cousins?
A lot of them, not all of them, and by close, I mean we don't have those gatherings like we used to. And I travel so much, and now each of us, those we all have our own families. Who some of them have families.
Yeah.
So we've taken that what we had been taught, and we've applied it to our own families, having those family reunions with our families. Our grandparents are since passed, so the patriarch matriarch are no longer there. The new patriarch is my dad, and a lot of those uncles are all gone now. They've passed.
Yeah.
But there's a few, thanks to technology, Facebook, and those things, we all stay.
Y'all probably have a pretty big Facebook group.
They do, yes, they do.
um, so Craig, so much of your music and your life has been about your connection to God. And your memoir is called God, Family, Country. It came out a couple of years ago. And of course, you had a record called that. Was the church a regular part of your life as a kid?
Oh, absolutely, always has been. That's not to say that there weren't times in my life where in my military. Church was still a part of our life. In fact, it was a big part, especially with our children. But I traveled a lot. I deployed a lot. So I was gone a whole lot. So I didn't get to do the church thing as a family like I did as a kid growing up.
What did it look like and feel like on a Sunday? I mean, tell me about the church itself that y'all would go to.
Oh, it was a typical Southern Baptist church, Uh, Sunday morning service, Sunday afternoon was just like the song. That's what I love about Sunday. Catnapping on a porch swing, football, gathering with friends. And again, most of the time with us, it was family. And then Sunday night service. It was a pretty busy.
It
And then
was a
you have a
full
Wednesday
day.
night. Oh, it was a full week. You have a Wednesday service. Then you have a Bible study group. Then it was always something.
Was there any connection between music and the church for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of my influence comes from listening to the choir sing and at times being a part of that. Music has always been a big part of my life. My dad was a musician, so I grew up in and around the music, so it was always a part of my life. But I didn't have the interest in music early on, and I wish I had a great answer as to why. I think maybe it was because I was around it so much, and it was a part of our life that I really wanted to just go do something else. Why join the army? So
Yeah.
but absolutely, church music, gospel music, it was a big influence, a big part of my life. My mom was a great singer. She wasn't a musician. She wasn't part of a band, but she was a phenomenal singer. She had a beautiful voice.
Mm. I wanted to ask about your dad's music career or his music interests. There were some great pictures in the book that you had of him with his band, and they were all dressed up in
Those were
these,
all his brothers.
great outfits. Yeah. I mean, tell me about his influence on you as a musician.
Well, I think the influence was always there, but I didn't really, like I said early on in my life, I didn't aspire to be a musician. As a kid, I wanted to be a policeman, a fireman, a soldier. I wanted to do those kind of things. Um, but I think the influence, like I said, was always there. But it wasn't until I was older and in the army and away from home that I started writing songs. And that's when I kind of reflected back on some of that influence. And I think those things were always a part of me. I just kind of semi ignored them as a young man. And again, and it wasn't until I was away from home in the army and started writing songs that I remembered a lot of the things. And when you grow up in and around it, I can remember us being toted and tugged and forced to go to a session or a show or something, a place called the Jingo Jamboree in Nashville, or a taping at TNT or something like that. And we didn't want to go. We wanted to be with our friends, our cousins. We wanted to go do other fun things. So it was almost like it was something I didn't. Not only did I not want to do it, I didn't want to be around it. But gained appreciation for the influence later in my life.
Have you had a musical kind of dialogue with your dad over the years?
Oh yeah, my dad's a big part of the reason I do this.
Yeah.
When I was in the army, I started writing some songs, and my dad was the one that convinced me to go to the studio and record some stuff. Took me up, helped me set it up, and kind of really encouraged me to try to pursue it.
Yeah.
Had he not done it, I probably wouldn't have. I know it's a very, very extremely difficult business.
Yeah.
For every one, there's 100,000 that are trying. And I knew that, and I had a good job and a family, and I didn't really want to mess that up. That's the reason when I left active duty, I stayed in the active reserves, because I really didn't think it would work, and I didn't want to lose my time in service or my rank. So I continued to do it, and it wasn't until I had a couple of hits on the radio that I felt like, I may have a shot at this. And then when they made me a member of the Opry, that's when I felt like I may be able to actually have some longevity in the business.
Well, that's a pretty good sign right there.
We're
I,
living with it.
I want to talk about that connection between the military and music for you. You spent a lot of years in the Army, and during that time, you were jumping out of airplanes and you were serving in active combat zones. I mean, you were doing some very intense stuff. And I'm wondering if there's some aspects of your life in the military that kind of prepared you for a career in country music?
Oh, absolutely, no question. I tell people all the time I attribute a lot of my success in this business to skill sets that I learned in the Army. I think probably the greatest thing that I learned in the Army that affects me today is having had the ability to go to other countries and experience other cultures and truly appreciate how fortunate we are in this country. It gave me such a great deal of appreciation for the things that I think some people can easily take for granted, especially musicians. That for me, every day was a blessing. Like I said, early on for years, I just kept waiting for somebody to tell me that it wasn't going to work going back in the Army. And I would have been like, man, that's awesome. What a great time I had. What a blessing to be able to do this and that. And now looking back, when writing the book, it was like, holy cow, man, I've done so much. And, some of it you just get so busy, you don't even realize it. But being in the Army taught me how fortunate we are. And so for me to have a job where I get to be creative and influence other people in a positive manner is beyond anything I could ever imagine.
Craig, when you think about all the people that you served with, um, the drill sergeants, the generals, the people that you interacted with every day, I'm wondering if there's someone who made a really big impression on you or who changed your life in some way.
Oh yeah, I mean I could go, very depending on my geographical location, my unit of assignment or whatever. I could name somebody from each place, but there are a few people in particular. One of which is responsible, partially responsible as well for me being in this business. Now, gentleman's name was Colonel Bill Greer. Uh, Oddly enough, that's my. I think that's my real last name. It's Craig Morgan Greer.
Yeah.
Um, and Bill Greer, his wife's name was Karen. My wife's name was Karen, and we were assigned together. And they would get invitations to the women's luncheons, and he would always get two for Karen Greer, so he'd always throw one away and give one to his wife. He didn't realize my wife's name was Karen. But when it came time for me to reenlist after I had almost 10 years of active duty service, I sat down with him. He was my commander at the time. And I talked to him about, me potentially pursuing music. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. And my dad, at this point, I'd been in the studio. We were stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was an observation controller, like an evaluator for the United States Army, and I did all the fire support, special operations stuff, and I did all their evaluations. And so when they would come in and do the mock war games, I was the guy that told the guys who did what I did in the military what they were doing right or wrong, so to speak. And I'll never forget, I was at 9.5, again, almost 10 years, and I sat down with him. I was up for reenlistment, and I either had to reenlist or get out. It was that, I had to make a decision. And I'd been writing these songs and going in the studio with my dad, and, I had a few people in Nashville that were semi-interested, and I'll never forget sitting down with him, and I told him what I was thinking about doing, and he said, look, I will tell you this. He said, if you stay in the Army, I believe that you will be the Sergeant Major of the Army someday. He said, but I also believe that you got a shot at this music thing that a lot of other people might not have. And I thought, well, I'm going to take the chance. And he said, what I would do is, he said, I would stay in the active reserves. That way, if it don't work or if you're not happy with it, you won't lose your time in service and you won't lose your rank. And so that's what I did. And I did that for the next almost 7 years. So, and the whole time, in 7 years, I had hits on the radio, and I was still going, man, I just don't know. But we stayed in touch, and to this day, he's a very dear friend. When I first started in the music business, his wife was my fan club president back when we had fan clubs. So they've been very supportive, extremely supportive, and have become some of our closest friends.
Well, I guess he can safely say, Craig, I told you so.
Oh, he has. He has said that. I think he's more proud of the fact that I've had the success that I have than I am. He and Karen, his wife.
You must have had some pretty hair-raising experiences as well. When you think of the different places that you served, you were in Korea, you were in Panama. Is there one that kind of stands out for you as really that was the place where um, there was some real risk that I wasn't going to get out of there.
I mean, I could tell you that about half a dozen different places, but I think Panama is probably, the most impacting. Like a lot of service members, that was the first real conflict. So for me, that was the first experience, of battle. So absolutely, I've lots and lots of memories and stories. Some funny, some not so funny. Um, but for me, it was no different than anybody else sitting there and doing the jobs that we were doing. We all had a job to do, and we did our job. And I just now have a job where I get to talk about it and bring light to some of those men and women that are serving today. Some of which are experiencing, a lot of what we experienced.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, you must have made some real lifelong friendships in the military, and I'm wondering if that community is it seems to be a huge part of your life to this day. Seems to be part of everything that you do. Part of your tours and really part of your day to day. Is that fair to say?
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, even today, my group in Panama, we've lost a few people since then. And during that combat, we had a couple people in our unit that passed away. But my particular team, we still stay in touch today. And we all talk about the negatives of the social media and stuff. But I will say that is one of the blessings of the social media, the concept, all of these different things. But we all are able to stay together. We communicate with each other, and we are there for each other. Sometimes it's just a simple text, a message on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. Truth, whatever the platform may be. It's nice to know that you have people that have experienced what you've experienced, and a lot of them with you. So it's easy to reach out and stay in touch through those media platforms. But even what's amazing though, and what I have found is there are people that I didn't serve with that I meet later on. Some of these younger soldiers, service members that are coming in, they say, "Man, I was stationed with you in Fort Campbell," and I'm like, "You weren't with me in Fort Campbell because I'm twice your age." And they go, "No, no, I don't mean with you. I mean I was in the same unit." So
Uh,
we have that connection, even though we didn't serve together. We all served. And we all feel like there's this really unique bond that is only experienced in the military. There's no other occupation in the world. I mean, even cross branches. I met Marines and sailors and so on and so forth. That regardless of their branch, we all share a bond that is forever, and it's linking us together.
yeah.
That no other occupation shares.
Oh, well, that's a beautiful thing. All right. Well, Craig, I want to do something that we call the jam session. And this is just sort of a lightning round. Okay. This is just kind of 10 quick questions.
I'm terrible at
Um,
these things.
oh, it's easy. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First one's this is about as easy as it gets. Biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits,
Sweet or unsweet?
unsweet,
Okay. Deer hunting or turkey hunting?
turkey hunting, no question.
And the spring is here.
Yes, it is. It's so warm here. I expect to hear birds gobbling today.
The dish that I'm best known for in my family is blank.
My steaks.
Okay. The funniest thing about Blake Shelton is blank.
He drinks in a deer stand. Yeah, you can never kill a deer drinking in a deer stand. That's why he's a terrible hunter. Terrible hunter.
The one guitar that I would grab in a fire is blank.
My 1952 Les Paul.
The best dog that I ever had was named blank.
Oh, that's terrible. Right now, I would have to say Creed. It was my son Jerry's dog, and we have him still. He's still here, so he's
Hmm.
pretty special to us.
If I could do a duet with anyone, it would be blank.
Oh, that's tough. Probably CC Winus.
And y'all haven't done that before.
We haven't, not yet.
Yeah, got to make that happen.
It's hard to find a song that she's comfortable with
Yeah,
that I think will do well as well.
yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times, but usually in passing. We
Maybe
both
there's
go, "Hey, we got to do that song together."
maybe a Christmas song down the road.
hmm
Okay, the best barbecue joint in Nashville is blank.
Wits.
Okay. Last one. The most southern thing about me is blank.
The most what?
The most southern thing about me is blank.
It has to be my accent or my laugh. Everybody talks about my accent and my laugh. I didn't realize I had an accent, and it's not that bad until I get around other people who got a real bad accent.
It's pretty strong, Craig.
That's what they say. Ain't no hiding.
All right, that's it. Um, okay, so I want to talk about the outdoors just for a second. I know that you've been a hunter and a fisherman for a long time. I don't know if you know this, but I was the editor of Field and Stream for about 5 years, and
Yeah, I did know that.
so I've I've loved the outdoors for a long time. You had a show on the Outdoor Channel for years, and I'm wondering who was your greatest mentor when it came to being an outdoorsman.
Probably. Well, I mean, aside from my family, someone outside of my family, my mom, my dad, both were avid outdoors people, outdoorsmen. My first deer hunt was with my mom, not my dad.
Really?
Uh, yeah. So I grew up as a kid, not just hunting for sport, but hunting for food, fishing for food. That's what we did. So it's always been a part of my life. But outside of the family, there's a guy named Pete Shepley. You know who Pete is? Uh,
I don't know him.
Pete, I'm sorry,
I don't know him.
Pete Shepley with PSE Archery. He was the founder
Oh,
of PSE Archery,
oh, okay. Yep.
an extremely intelligent and extremely avid outdoorsman. He was a man's man. I mean, a real survival, real outdoorsman, but genius as well. He owns more patents on the compound bow than most other bow companies combined. PSE did. I don't know if they still do, but he and uh, I'm trying to think of founder of Quaker Boy Game Calls. Both of those two individuals, before I was Craig Morgan, before anybody knew who I was, when I was still just a soldier, both of them offered me, well, what we would call endorsements or sponsorships. Um, when again, before I was nobody, they liked my turkey calling, they liked my skill sets in that world, and took good care of me early on in my life, and so I'll never forget those guys. But Pete, in particular, was extremely influential with his knowledge.
And your mom, that's so interesting that your first deer hunt was with your mom. Do you
Yeah,
remember do
using
you remember
12
that
gauge
hunt?
shotgun, double aught buck,
Do you remember that hunt?
vividly. Yeah, we didn't get in a stand or nothing. We walked out in the woods, and I couldn't. I think it was. I want to say somewhere near Prim Springs over there. I don't even know where. I don't remember where, but I remember sitting down. I was young. I mean, I couldn't have been probably 10 or 12. Um, and remember sitting down at the base of a tree, and mom leaned back against the tree, and she put me between her legs, and I leaned back against her, and I had the shotgun, and I shot a doe.
You did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We skinned it together. We gutted it, took it back, and me and mom and dad and skin it. And I remember my siblings being around while we did it, and yeah, and then they
Wow.
processed all the meat.
Wow. What a story.
And my mom did most of the work.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Well, Craig, I want to talk about something that was incredibly difficult for you a few years ago, and with your own son, and you wrote a song called "The Father, My Son, and the Holy Ghost," and that was about the loss of your son Jerry to a boating accident. And first of all, I'm so very sorry for your loss. I'm sure it's still with you every single day. Um, but what you did when you wrote that song was something incredibly powerful. Um, and I'm wondering what kind of response you've gotten from people when they hear that. When you play it at shows, or when people talk to you about that song and what it means to them.
Yeah, it's been extremely powerful. I will tell you this: I didn't write that song. God wrote that song. Uh, I never intended for anyone to hear it when it happened. I cried the whole time I wrote it. Didn't Like I said, I didn't do it because I wanted to do it and help people. I'm just telling you, and I didn't do it because I needed to get it out of my system. I wished I knew as to why it happened. I mean, now I know. I feel like now that's what God wanted to do, and I'm grateful that I was uh, ignorant enough to participate in what it was He was planning, because I've got to see it firsthand. I've had a lot of songs, I've had a lot of hits, but I've never ever had a song that impacted people the way that song did. Wrote it by myself, like I said, with God. Went in and cut it myself. Did everything. I didn't play all the music. Obviously, I hired studio musicians come in and we produced it. Had Sonia Isaacs, who had lost a child as well, come in and sing with me on that song. And what God did with that, and I tell people all the time, that song was not for me and my healing. I don't believe that. I'm a guy that believes if when something hurts, you don't keep doing it. You just kind of avoid it as best you can. But what I also realize that sometimes we suffer pain, not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And I believe that with every fiber that's in my body. And if you're willing to suffer some of that pain for others, you are rewarded. It might not be now, it might not be till you're gone, but you will be rewarded. And I know that God used that song for a lot of people because of the response. We didn't even release it to radio, and it became the number one most downloaded song of all genres 4 times in a row. And I've heard story after story after story of what that song meant to people that have heard it.
Mm.
So that's what God does. And I was just grateful that I was a part of it.
I know you sent that song to Blake Shelton, I believe, when you wrote it. Tell me about how he responded to it.
Well, I sent it to Blake prior to going to Alaska. And I went up to Alaska and I was there for about a week. We have a place up there, a business up there that my son runs. I sent it to him and I didn't get anything. And I took a picture of a moose like 10 days later. I seen a moose out and took a picture and sent it to him. And immediately he responded to me and he said, "Holy cow, this song." And I had half forgotten that I sent. I said, What are you talking about?" He said, "The song you sent." I said, "I sent you a picture of a moose." He said, "I seen the moose, but I'm talking about the song." I said, "Dude, I think I sent that to you, 2 weeks ago." He said, "You did? I'm sorry I didn't listen to it." And he said, "It's unbelievable." I said, "Well, thank you." Blake lost a brother early in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I sent it to him. Just to, we're friends and we share music sometimes. And like 3 days later, Blake calls me and says, "Dude, have you talked to your management or anybody in town?" Now, mind you, I'm in a place where I don't get great service. And my phone, when I did get in service, it was blowing up. Message on top of message, email, voice messages, everything. And Blake's was the one that I clicked on first for whatever reason. And it said, "Dude, you need to call your management. Your song has blown up. It's gone viral." So I called my management and I said, "Hey, Blake just called me and said that the song had blown up or something, because we weren't intending on releasing it. They just put it out on the socials for people,
Yeah.
And my manager's like, "Yeah, everybody has talked about it. Can you come in tomorrow or the next day? They're wanting you on Fox and Friends. They're wanting you on Kelly Clarkson. They're wanting you on this and various shows." And I said, "Man, I can't leave here right now." I said, "I'm sorry." So I told him, I said, "Look, I'll be home on Monday." And this was like a Wednesday prior.
And you're in Alaska.
I'm in Alaska.
Yeah.
in the bush in Alaska. I said, "I'll be home Monday. And then I'll be there and y'all can, we'll do whatever we need to do." And then, like I said, the rest is history. It just kept, you'd think it was over. It was become the number one most downloaded song. And then I did the Kelly Clarkson show and it became the number one most downloaded song again. I did Fox and Friends and it became the number one most downloaded song again of all genres. It was just the craziest thing. But what I seen in it was God doing something that I didn't even know that I was a part of initially. I didn't even know that I wanted to be a part of. But I'm grateful. Like you said it earlier, it still hurts every day. I tell people all the time, when you lose a child, my son died in 2016. For most people, that's, 8 years, 9 years. For me, it was yesterday. And
Yeah.
every day it was yesterday. That's how fresh and new it is in our heads and hearts every day. Um, so I think for me, when I know that God is using us and our heartache to help other people, I'm willing to accept that.
Well, it certainly seems to be what's happened with that song, and I think there are a whole lot of other people out there who hadn't even heard it yet, um, and so it's got a long ways to go. Um, so it's a beautiful thing you've done, Craig. I want to talk a little bit about your new music, and I know that you've got a run of shows coming up with Blake, actually. And this podcast will air, I think, right after you're done with those shows. Um, but I'm curious, do you send him your music when you're working on something new? Would he have heard all these songs a while ago?
He's heard a few of them.
Yeah.
I sent him a few things, just to see what he liked and what he thought. And of course, he'd send me some stupid message about this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I don't know what you're thinking. I'm not sure if I want you on the Friends and Heroes tour. Which means he loved it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's his way of
yeah, I
saying
mean,
it.
we do that. He just did a new project, and now we're on the same label. We're on the same record label together, so it's even worse. But I did go in and sing on a song that he's about to release on a new project that he has out.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Is that announced, or is that
Not yet.
not yet? Okay, coming soon. Well, I want to ask you about a particular song on the new EP, and again, it's called American Soundtrack, and the song is called "That's Who I'm From,"
Yeah.
and it's a lot of fun. It sounds like it'll be a really fun one to play at a show. Um, Tell me, it sounds like a great bar song. It's got a great energy to it. Tell me about how this one came together.
Phil had actually started it, had the idea, and brought it to me and said, "Hey, this is what I've got." He had a half a verse or so, and I said, "I love it." So we were writing on it, touring, and kind of got busy and got away from things. And we were in Detroit doing a show for Tunnel to Towers, I think, which was sponsored by Chevrolet and Walmart. They were the big two sponsors. So we were in there, and I'm like, it was a very small group, very private show. And I said, man, I got an idea for the second verse of this song. But, let me tell you the concept first. The concept is everybody says, where are you from? Where are you from? And it's not where I'm from as much as it's who I'm from. Who am I from? The people that influence me make up who I am, not geographical locations. They do help, obviously, but it's really who you're from. But we never ask anybody who you're from. And Phil and I, he had told me about this. I'm like, this is freaking genius. I love the idea. But we were there, and I was said, man, we need to do something. Maybe we can get us a Chevrolet dealership endorsement if we add Chevrolet. And it was Walmart, and I said, "We're Walmart. We're Walmart every day. Something else, Chevrolet, baseball, and apple pie. That's who we're from." And every line in the song, if you say it by itself, it stands alone, and it really, in my opinion, depicts a reference of who you could be from. You know, um, uh, trying to live the red words. Everybody that's any kind of faith at all, I don't care what you are, the red words are the ones Jesus said. And
Yeah.
we're trying to live what Jesus said, following the Father and Son. It's just who we're from. So, yeah, that it's a very biographical song. And I think it's very biographical for a lot of people in our nation who for a long time have been very quiet.
Yeah.
uh, because humility is more important than pride and faith. Understanding that, our faith, if we have pride in anything, it's our God, not ourselves. But we're learning that it's okay to be proud of your faith in God and talk about it. It truly is reflective of who we are or who we're from.
Yeah.
And I believe it's who the majority of the people in this nation, who the way they feel.
It's been about, I think, 18 months now or so since you enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve.
Yes.
Um, and you did that on stage at the Grand Ole Opry, which was a really cool thing to see. I saw the video of it. Talk to me about why you wanted to do it on that stage and what your service looks like today.
Well, I'll tell you, the selfish reason was I wanted to go back in the Army to finish out my 20 years. I wanted to get that letter that says I served my country for 20 years. You know, when you leave the Army, if you don't retire from the Army, if you just get out, it doesn't matter if you serve 3 years or 19 and a half years. You don't get a letter that says thank you for your service to your country. You get good conduct medals, you get those things, but you don't have a letter of retirement. And I didn't get that. So I wanted to do that. Secondly, I did it because I got to marry my two lives back together. When I first started the music business, I was still in the Army, active duty. So it was both of those were such a big part of my life that when I started pursuing the music more full time and the military less full time, I missed it. And I've missed it since. So to bring those two worlds back together, it was just very poignant for me to do it at the Grand Ole Opry. And lastly, I wanted to help with Army recruiting. When I went back in, Army recruiting was at an all-time low, and for a lot of obvious reasons. And everyone has their own take on as to why it was not working for whatever reason. But I thought if I could in some way encourage others to join the military and serve their country, I wanted to do that because it was so good for me and so great for me that I wanted other people to experience that as well.
Well, it was a great ceremony, and I love that you chose to do it that way on that stage of all places. So that's great. Congrats to you on that.
Thank you.
Well, Craig, I just have one more question for you. What does it mean to you to be Southern?
Kind, caring. I always felt like, and I've been all over the world, and I do believe that in the South in particular, there's a sense of caring that you don't really feel everywhere else. Sometimes it may be a little, you may think it's fake with the honeys and the darlings and the sweethearts and the buddies and the buds and the bubbas and the conversations, the way people talk to you. But what you get is that person pulling over to help you change a flat or making sure you're okay. Are you all right, honey? Are you all right, buddy? You need some help? Can I call somebody? You get a lot of that here. Um, and I think that's important. Kindness is and caring is at the core of our faith, and I believe it's at the core of this country. Uh, we have to take care of ourselves first, or we can't take care of other people. And I think that's very important. I say that to our soldiers all the time. You got to take care of yourself, or you're not going to be able to help your family and your country. Say it to Christians. You got to take care of your faith, or you're not going to be able to preach to others. And I believe that our country does that better than any other country in the world. And I've been to over 90 different countries, and I've never experienced it anywhere else. And only in the South do you get it to that degree.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I appreciate your perspective and your comments and your time today. And I got to say, congrats on the new EP. It's terrific. Congrats on the book. There's a paperback out now, and the tour you've got coming up, and everything else. And thanks for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you very much.